This is a video on Aeon Timeline 3, what's new, and I do this to high demand in English. I did a series on tutorial videos for this program in German, just for my fellow German writers, but of course English speaking people find it as well, and they asked for English videos. I looked at the captions. YouTube can automatically capture my words and make captions from it, which I could probably translate, but I had a look at it and it's impressive, but still far too many failures. So I would have to just correct the whole text before I translate it, because it just puts some words in it that don't make any sense. So I think that's far too much work for me, and it would also be far too much work to do the whole thing again in English. I don't have the time for that, but I decided at least to make one video with the biggest new features, and this is this. So I will show you what's new in Aeon Timeline 3. Not everything. You can go to the website and have a look at the list of new features. That's easy. You don't need me for that, but I will show you the concept and what it means for the practical work to have these new features and differences. I was a beta tester for the program, so I'm not associated to the developer or anything. I'm just a writer, and I like the software, and I helped with beta testing, so I decided to make a video. Okay, so let's start. In Aeon Timeline 3 we have a ton of new features that really make the usage of the program better, different, and I will tell you first what my main limitation was with the software before, because you had I will just open this template. So here we have Wuthering Heights, which is just a timeline that comes with the software as an example. This is mainly what Aeon Timeline looked before. You had this timeline and you could put events on them. Of course, there was a lot of other stuff, but this was like the main view and the main concept. So you had events on a timeline, and my problem was, when I was planning a story, I didn't necessarily know when an event will happen, or if at all. So what do I do when I think, okay, I know in the end they will marry, but I don't know exactly when, because maybe there will events happen in between that take a year, or maybe just a few months or whatever. So okay, I put the event somewhere on the timeline in the future, but I don't know yet. And when it becomes more clearly, you have to move everything, because actually there's stuff happening in between. And then you have, of course, some events where you say these are fixed and these sit on a specific date because you know they should be on this date, and you have others that are just placed somewhere because you need to put them on the timeline. And this wasn't really practical for me, because I just wanted to plot my my story and then later care about when it happens. Or if I did it the other way around, after writing the story, of course I knew better how exactly the chronological development of the events was, but after putting it inside Aeon after the story was already written didn't make too much sense, at least not if I'm not editing a lot, and then it was very helpful. Okay, so what's new? I will come to these different views here in a minute, but what is new as a concept is the ability to create events that don't have a date yet or maybe we'll never have a date. And from that, a whole lot of possibilities evolve. So we don't only have this timeline view, we have a spreadsheet, which is just a list of the events, of course with a lot of metadata, etc. And you can go here and click what you need in your metadata. Everything in the whole app is customizable to the limit. So here I can just create a new event. I will just call it new event, and I don't need to set a date yet. I can maybe give it a color or whatever I need. Let's open it in the inspector. I can write a summary, do everything with it, but I don't have to set a date yet. So I can have a list with events that are not on the timeline at all. If I go back to the timeline, I don't have new event here, but it's created, it's there, I can use it. And this makes it so much more flexible to work with Aeon Timeline. There's a second part of this, which is the narrative, and that means that now we are allowed to set a narrative order of events which is not tied to the chronological order. So you see here chapter 1, chapter 3, 2, 3, etc. And you have scenes inside these chapters. The whole structure is of course free to choose, but I can go here and say in chapter 3 I want to tell the events in a different order. I want to give like a opposite of a flashback, you know what I mean? And I can say I change the order of the events here. So this will be told in the story and the narrative before the other event. But in the timeline, wherever it is, I can go here and jump immediately. Here it's still in the actual chronological order, so it's not affected by the narrative order. And the narrative is also what you can sync to your writing programs. You can sync with Ulysses and Scrivener, and this narrative order will be reflected by your binder in Scrivener. So in this case you would have folders inside your manuscript in the binder in Scrivener, and have folders called chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Within these folders you have documents which reflect the events. So you can choose how and what to sync to Scrivener, and that was the other limitation I had, or at least, well, you could already decide which documents you sync to Scrivener with the old version, but it was not really possible to reflect your manuscript within Aeon. You just had events, and some were maybe part of your narrative, and others were maybe just background information that sits on the timeline, and there was no really. You could of course give them different colors or something in Aeon, but in order to sync it with Scrivener, that was not so comfortable. So that's possible now. You can also now sync non-event type items to Scrivener, for example the characters. So you can choose to have outside of your manuscript order folder in your research folder in Scrivener, you can now sync for example characters, which can also be grouped, and so you can have a folder called characters in Scrivener, and within you have documents for each character, or you can have within another folder called group A, whatever, and within that you have your characters or your locations or everything you want. So that's another big update, whatever. So now let me show you the different views we have. Of course, the timeline view. There are also a lot of little improvements. As I said, you can look at them at the website. We have the spreadsheet, which is very, very comfortable to use. You just go here, write something, blah blah blah, hit enter, write the next. So you can very fastly create new items and just start planning, brainstorming without any borders or anything holding you back. And then you can go in later and start adding details or whatever. You have the relationship view that was also there in Aeon 2, where you can, well, see all types of relationships. Of course, you can choose what is shown here, etc. Then another new view, which is called subway view, and this gives you like a subway map of events. So it's a different kind of visualization. Now we have story arc. I could also do place. So you see it's only 2 locations in this example. You see which events are in which location, etc. I already showed you the narrative, and for the narrative you also have an outline view, which looks in at first sight like the spreadsheet, but it represents the narrative order of events, not the chronological order. You see you have like chapter and scene can be expanded and minimized. And then you also have a mind map view, which I really like. The mind map view is just a freeform view. You have a canvas, and you can put on this canvas every item you have in your timeline. So here they made a family tree. They just put persons on the canvas, and you can put it wherever you want, you know. You can also add new relationships with this little symbol here, and immediately get to choose from the possible relationships that can be made. Yes, you can create many mind maps. You can also create events within the time map, so you don't need to go to the spreadsheet. You could just double click, create a new event. And again, I really like this for the brainstorming phase of a story, because I tend to work visually. I would just clutter events in some form, you know, for a specific character or some part of the story, clutter them here, others over there, and then start making connections and everything. And afterwards I can give them dates or add them to the narrative, and I'm not bound to put them on a timeline where they just sit, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to create them. And now I know if it has a date, it is a date that I deliberately chose and made a decision on, and that should be on a date. And if I don't know where it sits yet, I don't need to give it a date. Once it has a date, I know I decided to use that date. What's also new is constraints. I will not go deeply into these constraints, but this means that you can make events dependent to another, and so that when you set up specific rules, on how they are dependent on another. And when you change one, you can either choose for the program to adjust it automatically, or you can choose just to give you a warning so that you see there's something wrong and then you can do it yourself. For example, you can say events are blocked or block others. So if I say this thing can only happen if this thing is already finished. This is particularly useful for project management. You say some task cannot start before the other task has finished, and then you can say this event blocks the other one. We'll search for implores, Kathy, whatever implores means. So now this is blocked by this, meaning this cannot start until this is finished. So if I now move this one, it gives me a warning. This is not possible. And I can now go inside and either choose to just move it or go on resolve it all, and then the software will do it for me. This is the dependencies is block or blocked by is the more simple variation, and then I also have date constraints where I get very specific possibilities to say it is only on a specific weekday. It can only happen on a specific weekday, or it starts 10 minutes after the end of another, or it must be equal to, or whatever, start and end. So this can get very complicated if you need it. My warning is, don't use this if you don't really need it, because it is a great thing to have the possibility. I really like it, but usually for normal chronological working, you will just use this and you will see, oh, this is after that, okay, that's fine. And if you move it, maybe you say, okay, I should move the other event too. That's just how you usually work with it. And these constraints are very nice if there's stuff where you either say it must not happen, I really must take care that these events don't get in a different order, or if you say it is something that I might overlook when I start changing my events. Maybe something is 1 year apart from another, and it must adapt if you change it in the future to a day before the other thing also must be changed to a day before, or whatever. For these cases, it is a good thing. But if you do it too much, you must consider that you will have a lot of dependencies between stuff, and changing one thing might cause a chain reaction of changes because you just did too much with these events between each other. So I think it's a good thing to have, but you should not get too excited and start adding all kinds of dependencies, which just make the thing complicated and start causing effects that you didn't foresee. For the normal view, you just have the timeline and see what happens, and this is usually, I would say, this is enough to just see, this is in, and if I move this, do I want to move the other as well, or maybe not? But it's a great feature. And another important new feature is the split views. You see the symbol, you can click on it and have two splits, and you can use them in all kinds of ways. For example, have the timeline in one and the spreadsheet in another, and then you can just drag events from the spreadsheet. For example, those new ones I did that don't have a date yet, I can just drag it onto my timeline and place it where I want. I can also say I have two different timelines, and I use the massive filter function to filter one timeline for like one person and the other for another, for example. And I can also make multiple splits. So if I press the Alt button, no, what's it called? Well, you know what I mean. If I press Alt, I can split vertically. So I could even have like a mind map here and a spreadsheet here and the timeline down here or whatever. I made the window not too large so that it's easy to see on a small screen. If you watch the video on a small screen, it's better not to record my whole screen, but I have a large iMac screen, and here if I do something like this, you know, that's still useful on a large screen. It's of course not useful on this little window I have open here, but you can make a lot of splits if you want to, and have all kinds of views and filters applied, and feel like a pilot in a spaceship. So that's also a great new feature. And again, there's a lot of little stuff that I cannot all go into in this video. One more thing maybe that I also really like is the pricing model, because they have a very good sweet spot between one-time buying and subscription. You buy the app one time and it is yours to keep forever. It's not a subscription model where you lose the app once you stop subscribing. You can just keep it. You get 1 year of updates inclusively with the buying price. So your app will update for 1 year, and then you can choose to buy another year of updates, or you can choose not to and just use your app the way it was. The developer has a lot of stuff on his list that I know he will add in the future. So it is of course a good option to take the updates, but you are not forced to. And you can even say, I don't want updates now for like 2 years. And when there's a point where you say, okay, now it got so much better, I want the updates now, then you can still go in after 2 years and pay the, I think, $35 or what the price is, and then you get all the updates you have missed until now, and you have updates for another year. So you are completely free to decide when you want to buy new updates. But the app is constantly developed. The developer does have a constant income, which is of course a big problem for the developers that do those big versioned apps where you say you have version 1 and everybody buys it, and then you have to wait a decent time until you offer something new that will give you new income. So I think that's a great model, and it's perfect for both the user and the developer. I wonder why not more developers do it this way. Okay, so that's the video, and I hope you learned something. One thing, you can ask questions in the comments. I will try to help you out, but there's a very nice forum, and there are experienced beta testers on the forum, and of course the developer, and you will get a lot of help there. You don't need to feel lost if you don't find a solution for your problem or whatever. So thanks for watching. Bye bye.